Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Today we are going to be chatting a little bit about mobile testing and how you can actually increase the speed of overall engineering organization by using some automated testing strategies. Denora here, I'll move to the next slide. So I'm Nico, I'm the VP of Customer Success here at Waldo. We are an automated mobile testing provider. I work with our team of customer success managers to help people implement our automated testing solution. And one of our fine customers, Denora, is here to chat about her experience using Waldo and with test automation in general.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dinora Tovar. I'm Google Developer Expert on Android and also head of mobile at Konfio, which is a Mexican company of financial services. So, yes, let's start it.
Let's do it. Okay. So I think, I'll kick it over to Nora soon, but the first question that people always have to answer when it comes to mobile testing is, do you go for speed or quality? So a lot of folks will say, I want to go really fast, in which case, let's not test so much because manual testing is slow. Or they'll say, we want to have a really well-tested app, but we know that, building out a full scripting implementation or going through and having the app very thoroughly manually tested means that your release cycles might be slowed down a little bit. And with that context, I'll actually kick it over to Dinora to talk about her experience with Waldo.
I believe when
and Konfio.
Thank you. I believe that when you are doing testing, you need to make sure that you are addressing the right problems. And when you're talking about quality and speed, you want to go fast, but also you want to have quality, especially if you're working on a startup. So most of the times when I joined Konfio, there was not a mobile application. We were trying to launch our first mobile application. There was no mobile engineers. Obviously, there was no QA team. And back in the days, now we have a QA team. However, we were moving really fast. We want to do big wins over the time and try to figure it out how we were going to deliver a new product to our customers. So it's quite difficult to try to ship everything when you have some issues that affects your relationship with your customer, with your client. And remember, there is something really important when you are doing a mobile application, and that's the experience your users are having. So if your users ended up having a bad experience, that's very difficult to forget. They ended up just always being related to that specific issue. So what we needed back in the days was to make everything robust and scalable. And we need to make sure that we were not ended up having some issues when we were launching, when we were trying to build new stuff. So when we start doing that, we ended up doing a partnership with Waldo, because we need to have some specific cases when we were going to try when we try to deliver our process of QA and testing and regression and everything that goes when you are doing a new feature. So, for example, we ended up trying to use multiple devices that were catching all the bugs that we have. I know sometimes when you are a mobile engineer, you end up using some emulators, maybe some phones you have in your office, but that's not always enough. You need to make sure that you are doing the right views for some specific iPhone, some views for a specific Androids that are too small, maybe that they are bigger, etc., etc. So we also want to keep our testing between the engineering team, because our specific way of work inside Konfio was doing a feature and then adding analytics and then doing the testing. So we want to keep that in mind. So especially because the thing that we were trying to achieve was trying to have some peace of mind when we were doing when we were doing the release of our mobile application, we have multiple products that generates different types of revenue that goes for different type of clients. So we want to make sure that the experience of our clients was the right thing to do. So we ended up doing this partnership with Waldo so we can make sure that everything was going great. But what happened was that we ended up doing a very hard shifting of the things we were trying to achieve when we were doing testing. Uh, what was happening was that we ended up doing testing over all our pipelines in our CI. So every time an engineer was trying to make a feature, they ended up doing a merge request or a pull request. We just GitLab, so it's a merge request. And when we were doing that merge request, we want to make sure that all our unit tests and our integration tests were running, and that the engineer that was doing some changes were not having any issues or affecting any other of the functionality that we have that are cross-platform. So for that part, we start doing that. And we also start doing some changes in how we deliver to our designers or product managers, all of our stakeholders. Every night, we ended up running a pipeline that was delivering a new version to our stakeholders, from designers to engineering, and even we have our chief technology officer receiving that that build that was only for testing to try what was happening, right? So we ended up doing a lot of health checks with Waldo also. These health checks are running very early in the morning just to check that everything is going fine and the app is not getting broken, because we are a startup and we move really, really fast. And it's quite complicated when you have an engineering team that is doing changes in your backend and an engineering team that is doing changes on the mobile. So we want to make sure that the backend engineers were not breaking anything, but also our engineers were not breaking anything in the last commits of the night. So we ended up doing that. And if we ended up finding some issues, we were the first ones to acknowledge that and take the ownership to make sure that everybody knows that there was something broken, and we ended up fixing it. If it was on our side, it was quite simple because the mobile engineering team ended up doing some changes, pushing a new version, and everything was fine. And when they were on the backend side was making sure that doing maybe a revert or maybe a cherry pick and making everything simpler, right? So pretty much we are running Waldo in every merge request and every health check in the morning and every deploy we have for our engineering team, QA, designers, product managers, etc. And we also are running Waldo for every deploy, making sure that we are not breaking anything and that we are shipping with peace of mind, with the things that we want to make sure that are working. Obviously, our engineering team is in charge to do all these testings, all these tests on inside Waldo, and they are very happy about it because it's quite easy to do, and it's quite straightforward when you try to move to push a new test to Waldo. So that gives us a lot of peace of mind, but especially it gives the engineers confidence to make sure that everything is working fine. So that's really cool. Can we go to the next slide, Nico? And I want to tell you a story because I know there is a lot of engineers that are trying to do some big changes on their mobile app. I'm especially on the Android side. I'm an Android developer. I've been doing Android for a long time. And recently, we start moving from XMLs to Jetpack Compose. I know that sounds like a big challenge, especially when you're in a startup in a company that is moving quite often. So what we ended up doing is creating a new fully designed system and changing and revamping our mobile application. This happened only in 6 weeks. And after that, we need to make sure that to be able to ship to production, everything was fine. So we make sure that all the flows and all the tests we have on Waldo were working fine. And with all these modifications we were doing, it was quite complicated because when you are moving from one design system to another design system, it means that you might be breaking something. But at least with Waldo, we made sure that all the changes that were happening uh, were actually making sense and they were not breaking anything for our clients. Um, at the end of the day, we can make sure that every change we do, it's fine around our mobile application inside our design system that is super complex and super, super big in only 30 minutes. This is quite the coolest thing I have found on Waldo because we can make sure that all the regression tests run in only these 30 minutes and everything is doing fine. And obviously, our engineering team is still testing a lot of the features they are doing because they understand what is the end goal we need to have with our clients. From the experience we are delivering to the analytics and the way the technology is working and the business logic. However, we recently acquired another company that is joining Konfio, and this other company has a QA team. This QA team now is using Waldo to make sure that all the regression tests are working fine, and they are also making sure that we are testing cases and scenarios with the mobile engineer team that might be not be thinking at that specific moment. So pretty much right now, Waldo is being used by the engineering team of mobile, Android, and iOS, and our very specified UI engineering team. So we can make sure that our app is getting built properly and in the right way we need to deliver. Okay. So I believe this is one of the coolest things we have done with Waldo. We are really happy with it. Uh, when we hear Waldo was delivering support for Android development, that was one of the most incredible changes we ended up addressing that helped us to scale. Uh, so at the end of the day, what we want to do is want to make sure that we are scaling fast and we are scaling with confidence. And this is something that it's quite complex, especially when you are moving too fast and things are changing a lot. And maybe one feature you are delivering today, it might be not tomorrow. So we need to make sure that that's possible and available. So pretty much we ended up doing a lot of things with Waldo, but especially we start doing making our pipelines smarter, running every time, making sure that everything was fine. We were also testing our commits. And obviously, we were increasing our coverage of our integration tests and our unit tests around the scope that we have on inside Konfio in our mobile application. And making sure that everything was scaling, that everything was fine, not only on the mobile side, but also on the backend side. So that has been working incredible, to be honest. That has helped us scale and making sure that everything is on the right position to make sure that Konfio is also scaling. And can we go to the next one, please? So that's the story we want to tell you. I know it's a lot of things to do when you are a mobile engineer and you want to make sure that everything is fine and everything is working properly. I know it's quite complicated when you are trying to make the features on time to production. But remember, there is also many things you have to do before jumping to production. And one of that parts are about testing. And testing, it means scalability for you as an engineer, but also scalability for your code base and your engineering team. So make sure you are testing correctly and you are making the proper tests for the proper features with all the cases and business cases and all the scenarios you might have, and make sure you are also attending the integration and the testing of your features. I don't know if you want to add something else, Nico.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, when you rolled out Waldo to your developers, what did they initially think of it? Because I know that for a lot of teams, they'll say, oh, we want our QA team to do the testing. And you mentioned that your developers take a very active role in collaborating with QA. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, of course. When you try to build an engineering team, you need to make sure that the culture you have inside this engineering team is quite important. For us, testing, DevOps, and other things like security are part of daily culture. We make sure that we are addressing these parts as an engineering team because we believe that that will help us scale as a company. So remember, testing is part of your day to day as an engineering. You cannot give that to a QA engineering. The QA engineering has a specific role of quality and assurance that it's very different of your work to make sure your code is working properly and you are not breaking anything. That's a different story. So you have to make sure that everything is actually set up and making sure that everything is quite cool. So you can make sure that the job of your QA engineering is very specialized to solve some specific issues that is not part of your daily code.
And I know that you're using Waldo for mobile test automation today, but have you done anything with test automation before? And what's been your experience using our software versus, say, going down any other automation initiatives that you've had before?
Yeah, we have made from golden tests to using Firebase test rollup and a lot of other things. We have done a lot of other things. But at the end of the day, this is something when you are working on a startup and things change a lot. There's something that you ended up doing a regression and making another test for some specific view that changed completely with new different endpoints and things like that. And for that, it's quite complex to make sure that everything is working. And you ended up doing work and rework of the things you are doing. So when you are using Waldo, you ended up doing one test and making sure that everything is going fine. And if you have to change it, it's quite simple. It doesn't take a lot of time. However, Waldo is really smart to make sure that it's addressing or making the changes or touching the screen that is actually the screen that you need to be. So it's quite simpler, to be honest. It's quite straightforward. So yeah, you should give it a look, guys, and make sure that you are doing the test in the right manner, and making sure that if you are doing a change in a string, it doesn't get break every time you are pushing to production.
One last question for you. You mentioned that you acquired this company. They have a QA team. You also have developers that are creating tests on Waldo. How has, obviously you're working with our automation suite, but what sort of workflow do the QA people who interact with Waldo take? Do they still do manual QA? Are they mostly in Waldo? What's the, if I'm a QA person using this, like how does it, or you're doing manual, how does that structure work at Konfio?
Well, for some parts, we still need to use manual testing because we have an MPOS that is the place when you put your credit card when you are trying to make a payment. And that happened on a physical device, so we need to do that. However, our QA team is very in love with Waldo, and they are doing some of the regression tests that doesn't require manual intervention. And only the part that requires manual intervention is when they are actively doing these tests hand by hand, because it's quite complex not to do it that way, right? You have to swipe your credit card and you have to try your contactless process and things like that. But everything else, they are addressing over Waldo and they are doing regression over Waldo. We are trusting Waldo to make sure and catch all the bugs we have. So every time we do a deploy, we make sure that everything is running fine and that we are ready to launch.
So you're testing, you're doing smoke